I mean, it only took like a couple taps and it started going right in. And I was actually squeezing it too with my hand on the backside back here against the inside of this crank like this. So, alright, so we're that far along. Next thing we need to do is we're going to put our connecting rod and our piston in here. Two things we need here. Well, one thing that's very critical is we have our camshaft over here. When we put this connecting rod in this piston, there is a hole in this rod cap. All the Kohler's cast iron K series have this same design. It's a splasher system. There's a hole right here in this. This needs to be facing your camshaft. When this thing comes around and swipes through the oil pan, this dipper here actually creates like a splash of oil, and that's what lubricates the connecting rod, the cam, the lifters, the crankshaft bearings, all that. It splashes everything. The previous person, this thing was in backwards on the original crankshaft I took out of this engine, and that original connecting rod and crankshaft were basically messed up really bad. Crank was out around, needed to be reground. It was 20 thousandths out of spec. This one is a good used one, so that's why we're using it. I'm trying to save money on my little project and that. So anyways, this needs to face your camshaft. So when you put this back together, you need to make sure you get the piston and the rod oriented correctly in the cylinder, that this will face the cam. So that said, connecting rods all will have some kind of marker to show which direction the cap goes on the connecting rod. This particular one has these lines here, so this line and this line need to be on the same side. All other sides should be smooth. Some other connecting rods will have a marker on the outside, like a different type of style marker of some sort. It's usually pretty self-explanatory because it'll be the only corner on the cap and on the rod that have some kind of mark, and those need to line up. It's the way the machine work was done, so that they're matched to each other. So we need that to go in the cylinder, and we need this to face our cam. So when we flip this engine over to put this piston in, we want to make sure that we get it that direction. So I'm going to set this like this for now, just to kind of hold it there. So our camshaft is here. I like to have this thing facing away from me like this when I do it. Take note, your camshaft is on this side. You can see the pin that you just put in goes there. We want that hole facing it. The connecting rod is mated to this piston accordingly to the marks on this corner. The hole is over here, so this piston needs to go in like this. So when we put this in there, we want to make sure that we get it in there that direction. If you don't have a Kohler K series book to work with, I mean, you can do it without it. You can cheat a few things, a little common sense will help you, but there's a lot of little things here and there that book can help you with, like tolerances and torquing bolts correctly, setting the rings up correctly on the piston, orientation, just things like that. You know, putting the snap gauge in the bore and checking out the bore's taper and out around. All those kinds of dimensions are in those books, and they're very helpful when it comes to that. If you're going to do a for real rebuild and you want that thing to be like brand new, you need to have that information. So we're going to take and oil this thing up. I always oil everything. Little 1030. Just kind of coat everything. It's not going to hurt nothing. It's exactly what you need to do so everything goes together good. So this is going to drop in there. Now that I've rotated it, figure out where our mark was again. There. And there. So it's got to go in like, just like this. So this is the way it's going to go in there. So, there's several ways to do this. If you have a ring compressor, that would be awesome. That'll help you tremendously. It'll make it much easier to get this in there. If you don't have a ring compressor, you can very carefully squish them down with a little tiny screwdriver, each one at a time, and just kind of gently push it down, get them started in there. So, I'm going to grab my ring compressor out of the toolbox. So a ring compressor is basically a metal sleeve, like so. Has a spring steel, basically is all it is. Has a deal over here to release it. Way to crank it down. Use a 1/4 inch drive on it. Crank it down. So actually, I'm not sure this one will go that small. This is meant more for cars, but looks like she might make it. Maybe. So I lifted that piston up. We want to lift that piston up just a little bit so you can get the rings fully in there. Yeah, this might not work so good because it's larger. Yeah, this one's not going to work for this. It's too large. It's meant for automotive, for cars. I've used it in the past on small engines, but this bore is so small for this particular engine that it's going to be, we're going to do the cheating method here. And so our first ring is a scraper ring. I think we're going to get this. This one's going to be, I think, a little bit tricky. Yeah, this isn't going to work so good with this. I don't feel like fighting with this, honestly, so let's see if we can just get it to work. I'm really kind of surprised it doesn't. It's not going to work. It's just won't go small enough. Oop. Well, we're gonna have to do this the difficult way. Put a little tension on it, start pressing the ring in from the open end, and don't like doing it this way, but that's it. I haven't rebuilt any of these in a long time and got rid of stuff and wished I hadn't. Alright, got one ring started in there. We need to get the next one in there. Alright, we dropped the oil ring and the bottom scraper ring in. Here's the next one. You gotta be careful of these top ones because they're a little more brittle. They're depending upon what material yours are, but make sure we're not hitting the connecting rod on the. I want to make sure the rod is not hitting the counterweights of the crankshaft too when you're doing this. You want to make sure it doesn't get twisted in there. You can see it can get twisted and then it ends up hitting the counterweights and you can't push it down any farther. So you kind of keep an eye on that.